welcome everybody to another episode of What the Fuck Paranormal with the Naked Bigfoot. I am your host, Mike the Naked Bigfoot. I want to take a moment to welcome everybody to tonight's live who is joining us live. As always, I'll give it a few minutes. And notice, by the way, that tonight's episode is well lit. Decided not to do tonight's episode in the traditional spooky vision that I have been doing them in, where it's been extra dark and creepy. We are currently, um, we are currently experiencing torrential rainfall here on the farm up here in the mountains in Blue Ridge Mountains here in Virginia. Um, I know you can see me, Chris. Finally, you can all see me in my glorious Technicolor. I'm not used to being seen. I'm not used to being in a room that's not dark and spooky. I mean, we've had some for the last 6 hours. It's been one super violent thunderstorm after the other. So I don't know what that means yet, but these thunderstorms were not forecast. Um, we're not in the forecast, so go figure on that one. Ooh. Oh, and as always, I gave it a moment. If anybody else has joined in, thanks again for joining tonight's episode, tonight's chat. I love you a long time, guys. As always, I always do a little bit of, before we start the show formally, I always do a little chit chat of the news of everything that's going on. And things that I'm currently intrigued about. Um, Papa Joey, welcome, welcome, welcome. Dude, we are having Texas-sized fucking thunderstorms up here in the mountains right now for the last 6 hours. I mean, if you want them, I'll do everything. I'll do a naked Bigfoot rain dance outside right now to send them your way, dude. Super R Show! What's up, Mike? Alan, it's good to see you, Alan. Oh, Alan, I'll take the cold any day of the week. The morning started off in the low 90s, and then the thunderstorms came in, and it's still hot as fuck, and the mountains are rumbling. I'd take that any fucking day of the week. Cold weather. I'm a cold-natured creature, not cold-blooded, cold-natured. Just real quick, let me tell you something that I'm currently intrigued by. That I'm currently amongst the 3,000 things that I'm always interested in, always talking about. Uh, has anybody heard about the massive cattle deaths that have happened here in the United States? Say here in the United States, because I have a lot of people who do watch my show who are not here in the U.S. Um, yeah, it's been over 10,000 heads of cattle have just died out in our Midwest right now. It's really, people are trying to blame it on the heat and the nighttime temperatures reaching 100 degrees. Um, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but we also just recently had a massive die-off of chickens as well, food chickens as well, chickens that were slated for food. Had a massive, massive die-off of chickens here in the United States as well. Something's going on. I don't know if it's something governmenty, shadowy, metaphysical, supernatural, paranormal, preternatural. I fucking don't know, but I also don't believe in. Can you hear the thunder right now, Chris? Because it is really ripping ass right here, right now, and I'm probably in this room that I sleep in. Um, is hey, what's up, paranormal? Um, Spiritual Paranormal, good to see you. Nice to have you on. Um, is probably the quietest room in the house. It's the most insulated, so you don't hear a lot. So if you can hear the thunder in the background, um, just let you know it's fucking loud. Thunder is serious right now. Okay, just wanted to throw it out there about the over 10,000 heads of cattle that have just recently mysteriously died here in the United States. So we're already having issues with the supply chain and food issues here in the United States, and then this happens. Shit's getting real, folks. Okay. Enough of my conspiracies for my almost conspiracy chat for the evening. Let's get on with tonight's show. Again, I want to welcome everybody who's just tuned in to What the Fuck Paranormal Chat with a Naked Bigfoot. Again, for those who don't know, I am your humble host, Mike the Naked Bigfoot. And before we start, we always have our disclaimers. Any views and opinions expressed by your humble host, which is me, is not meant to change your mind, influence you, indoctrinate you, or damage you anyway, physically, mentally, or psychologically. They are my own views. My show is here to both inform and entertain. If you walk away from tonight's show or any of the shows that I've done in the past or any of that I do in the future with a need to go and learn more about this wonderful, mysterious, and wonderful world that we all live in, I do ask you to do so sanely and to do so carefully, and do not take excessive risks that may harm you spiritually, physically, or mentally. Some of the stories you hear me tell, you'll hear me talk about some of the dumb shit that I've done for the sake of discovering information or discovering the truth or experiencing something. Yeah, it's still thundering. You should see the lightning. Well, I should have turned off all the lights and just had the lightning light up the room, because the lightning is fucking insane here on the side of the mountain right now. Um, one more disclaimer. You will, if you have any small children in the room, please ask them to leave now if you do not wish to expose them to naughty language and bad words. Your host will drop the F-bomb, as he's done frequently already. It's part of my vernacular, and it just comes out freely. It's not meant to insult. It's not meant to offend. It's just the way I talk. So, if you do not wish to have little boo-boo learn some naughty words at an early age, please ask them to leave or wear a set of headphones so they cannot pick up on the foul language that comes forth out of my mouth. Plus, some of the things I talk about or can be a little mind-numbing and may scare the little ones too. So you might want to put them to bed early or chase them out of the room. As some people may or may not know, if you're new to the channel, then you'll love to hear this part. We do play a game on my a drinking game on my chat. Anytime you hear me say that's a story for another day or that's a story for another time, which I will guarantee you I will say more often than not when I do ramble off subject, please take please take a drink of your adult beverage, a sip of it, or a gulp, or a shot of your adult beverage of choice. If you do not imbibe adult beverages and wish to play the game, feel free to take a sip of your tea, water, coffee, soda, your beverage of choice. If you are drinking adult beverages while playing this game, do not drink and drive, because I guarantee you'll probably be drunk off your ass by the time the show is over with. Alrighty, on with the show tonight. Wow, I got through all that fairly quickly. I might actually stay on subject and schedule tonight. It's kind of frightening, isn't it? I know I look scragglier than normal. I need to need to devote some salon time tomorrow. Make myself look a bit more presentable to the masses, and not look like the crazy bearded hermit guy that lives in the mountains. Alrighty, tonight's show. I will be talking about something that you know a lot of people find interesting and fascinating, and actually a lot of people who don't believe in the supernatural, um, for some weird reason, believe in past lives and reincarnation. Uh, Now, when you're talking about reincarnation, I think past lives and reincarnation are synonymous. Um, if you are with us, just a quick little side here. If you are experiencing flashbacks or you know that you've had a past life, um, then in some sense you have been reincarnated from that life. From that, when that last life ended, you were reincarnated into this life. So they do go together well. But I also find it fascinating, utterly fascinating. Um, People who do not believe, quotation marks, and the paranormal or the supernatural world, um, it's funny that they believe in this. Now, this is, past lives and reincarnation. Um, there's not much well, there is a bit of a supernatural aspect to it. But it's more metaphysical. It's dealing with the transmigration of the soul. And as everybody well knows, heavy metal! Good to have you on tonight. I'm going to pause again and thank everybody who's joining us right now. Thank you for coming on. Love you a long time. I've been told that term is politically incorrect nowadays. Thus, I will be using it a lot. That's insensitive and politically incorrect, so I'll be using it a fuck ton. Just because I'm spiteful. As everybody well knows, the idea of reincarnation, the idea of reincarnation can be, again, it can be found in just about all of the major world religions and minor world religions and cultural philosophies around the world. Completely fascinating. One of my eyes looks bigger than the other tonight. I look like fuck. I need to stop looking at myself. But that's a story for another day. Let's get the drinking started, guys. um, you have the Buddhists, of course, who believe in the idea of reincarnation. Their concept of reincarnation, won't necessarily be reincarnated when you do pass from this earth. That you will not be reincarnated as a human being again, so to speak. That you will be that you, depending on your the way you lived your life, you could be reincarnated as a human being, or you could be reincarnated as an animal. You can be reincarnated as a plant. There's a lot of things in the natural living world that you could be reincarnated with. And again, we're talking about Buddhist philosophy. Which, by the way, those who do not know, I did travel to Asia, to parts of Asia for a couple of months. Hey, hey, hey! Howdy, howdy, howdy! Good to see you. Good to see you. I have traveled back in my day. When I was on the I Need to Discover Who I Am tour, that I managed to take myself over to Asia. Imagine this: the wild mountain man in the civilized Asian countries. Christine, um, So the terror that I brought, again, I will have to do a show just in the time that I spent in Tokyo alone. You guys will love that because I learned a great deal about spiritualism and Japanese belief system, and how the Japanese the people, the culture, the Japanese culture, um, the what we consider the supernatural is a part of their daily life that they live. They're not shocked by the supernatural. That they see it as something that will always be a part of. It's a part of their daily life and a part of their lifetime, and they accept it. Um, they don't go out of their way to pish posh it. It's a deeply held cultural belief. It's passed along for every generation. I've not met anyone from Japan who didn't believe in a yokai or ayakashi or um, some other spiritual form, or when they didn't know a story about a yokai or an ayakashi um, that was told to them or something that they experienced. Fascinating time when I was in Tokyo. Absolutely fascinating time. But while I was over there, um, I visited several Buddhist temples and got to know um, a few Buddhist monks while I was there. They were not as forthcoming about their faith as I thought they'd be. Um, then I left and came back to the United States by way of Hawaii. Spent a long time in Hawaii. I've come and gone out of Hawaii for God forever. I met my final wife, the wife that I have now, the last one. She's Hawaiian. She's Polynesian. I met her in Hawaii during the last time that I spent a long period of time in Hawaii. When I came back to the States, I was able to go to the Oahu Temple, Buddhist temple, which is on Oahu. And I actually got to stay with the monks there. And they were a bit more forthcoming um, with their faith and answering my questions. They didn't look at me with suspicion. They accepted my me as I was and my insanity. And I learned a great deal about the Buddhist philosophy and a ton about reincarnation. Um, we started talking about reincarnation and the recycling of souls, of the soul. One day when I was out in the back in one of the, I was heading out to the meditation gardens behind the temple, and I was going to go talk to two monks that I was becoming good friends with, and there was a flock of brown doves. There are so many animals that live on the temple grounds. It was amazing. So many animals, completely unafraid of people whatsoever, because Buddhists have a high respect all life, um, in all of its forms, and they do not harm it. Now, these damn birds wouldn't get the fuck out of my way. I mean, I'm not talking about a three or four brown doves. I'm talking about a big ass flock of brown doves that were on the ground, and they would not move. I literally had to keep my feet planted on the ground, and I had to shuffle through them because they would not move their feathered asses out of the way. I got about halfway through them, and I got pissed off. Up to that point, I'd been controlling my anger a great deal about dumb things. But I got pissed off at these birds. And I lifted my foot. And I prepared to start. I was getting ready to start kicking doves out of my way. To kick a path through the doves. I wasn't going to kick them to kill them. I was going to kick their ass to make them move. There's a big difference. And one of the monks, who was one of the main groundskeepers there, he was over there and feeding the koi um, and the various other fish in the pond that was nearby. I heard him go, hiya, and I turned around with my foot pulled back. I was about to kick these doves. He went, no. He says, You don't know who they were. You don't know who they will be. And I looked at him and I went, now that's an interesting thing to say. I just thought they were shit, flying shit houses. But he sees them as potentially that maybe they were people, and maybe they would be people again. I know. Um, and that intrigued me, and I put my foot down, and I refused to kick the birds out of my way. Well, he came over he picked up a wooden rake, and he scooted the birds out of the way to let me through. He made a path. He scooted them out, just moved them out of the way to guide me through the flock of fucking doves that would not move. And we sat down for the next day after that. I sat down with him and his, because all the monks had their own small corner of a meditation garden in which they went to contemplate higher thoughts and higher concepts than I was currently able to comprehend. And he'd talk to me about reincarnation, and the transmigration of the soul, and how, based on how a person lived their life, they would get an opportunity. If they lived a life poorly, they would be given an opportunity in the next life to improve upon it, improve upon their spirit. Hey, Amy, to improve upon their spirit in the next life. And that the universe would grant them the form in the next life that would help them achieve this. Like if they were currently human and they were assholes in their former, in that life, they may be reincarnated as a donkey, as a work animal, as a pack animal, where they would be learning humility in that life, in that form as that pack animal, where it would, and when it died, if it learned that lesson properly, and when it died and its soul came back again, it would come back as a higher form of life. It may come back then as a human being with a better sense of humility, and it would continue, the soul would continue to improve upon itself until it reached a sense of, I know it's cliche to say it, it would sense a higher sense of nirvana, of all knowing, of all peace and perfection. And it could take hundreds, sometimes thousands of lifetimes to achieve that. Because you could regress. You could be, your soul, one of your lifetimes could regress. Like one of your lifetimes, you were doing really great up to a certain point. But the next life, you may be a complete asshole, and you have to, you have lessons to learn in the next lifetime to be able to get back on track again. I hope that makes sense to everybody. I made him explain it to me like 6 times for it to truly sink in and to make sense to me. And, in my faith, for those who do not know, I am a voodoo priest known as a Hongan. We also believe in coming back in a form of reincarnation to where we can come back into the world again. But we come back into the world again with the knowledge that we had in the previous lifetime. We have that. We don't have the knowledge per se. We have a sense of the knowledge that we gained in the previous life. And if we choose to live another life, then that information is imparted on an instinctual level. I hope that makes sense. Best way to explain it. We see it as and in Buddhism and in other faiths and cultures as well, they see the soul, or the spirit, what do you want to call it tonight, as being on a great wheel. and you do not step now in, say, Buddhism again with reincarnation. You don't have a choice per se to step off the wheel. It's going to be something that constantly, the recycling of the soul is constantly going to keep happening. Um, the same is now in my faith. We choose to step off the wheel and be born again into the next life, with an instinct of the knowledge. Now, if we choose not to, if we do not want our spirit to ever leave whatever afterlife it has achieved, we call it breaking the wheel. Um, you literally break the wheel to where the wheel no longer turns, that your soul is no longer in rotation, no longer in motion anymore. Um, but in my faith, it is done as an act of will. Um, you have to, you declare it. It'll never, this is the last time I'm going to be in this lifetime. After this, I'll exist on another plane. I will not come back to this plane of existence. It's declaring it. Now, in belief systems like Buddhism, you do, you can stop the cycle of reincarnation. But to a Buddhist monk, for anybody, you have to choose to stop the cycle of reincarnation. But it is considered a great, great sin to do it. And let me tell you why. To be able to stop, the only way to stop is the cycle of reincarnation, is by ending one of your lives by fire. You have to burn yourself alive. Because the only thing in the Buddhist faith that can destroy the spirit, that can destroy the soul, is the element of fire. And when you let fire consume you, if you choose to let fire consume you, and destroy your living body while your soul still resides in it, you've essentially destroyed your soul. You've taken your soul out off the great wheel, off the great wheel of rotation. And if you had to call it a sin, it's more like a great transgression. Like you've heard of Tibetan monks, the Buddhist monks of Tibet, that would protest against, say, the Chinese occupancy and things like that early in our century. That they would light themselves on fire in protest. That was considered the act of great self-sacrifice, to show how committed you were to that cause, is to burn yourself alive and to destroy your spirit, your living spirit within you, knowing that you would never come back. It showed the commitment that you were willing to put, that you were willing to take and willing to do. I know, it's very sad. It's very tragic. But I zoned out for a minute because fucking crazy amounts of thunder here on the mountainside right now. I keep hearing it. The walls are shaking a little bit too right now. It's freaking amazing. The gods are singing right now. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. Okay. Now, with reincarnation, how does it relate to past lives? Now, like I said earlier, reincarnation and past lives go hand in hand. Um, Reincarnation is where your spirit is recycled in a new body from a previous life. Most cultures and beliefs believe that you do not. The only thing you take with you, including Buddhism, like I said earlier, and including my faith of Buddhan, you take a you take the lessons you learned in the previous life with you into the next life. Um, you don't. You're not born and you don't open your eyes and go, "Oh, here's a new life that I'm in, and I remember everything back then." No, The lessons are imprinted on your soul and your spirit. Um, the memories are there too of your previous life, but you're unable to access them once you're reincarnated, unless you have help doing it. And that's when it comes down to, fuck, my brain just shut down for a minute. Get the shot. um, you ever have that sense of deja vu, um, where you'll walk into a room and you hear a conversation, or you'll be asked, or you'll hear somebody get asked a question that you should not have an answer for, but you have an answer for it. Um, or if you walk to, say, a historic site or an ancient site, say an old church, an old church, or an old graveyard, or an old battlefield, and you've stepped out in them, and you get this overwhelming sensation, um, that you've been there before, that you experienced something there before, um, that you get flashes of memory, flashes of feelings of somebody that's not you, but is you. Say, take, for example, the Civil War here in the United States. Again, I have a lot of international watchers, so I'll mention the Civil War. Um, a lot of soldiers here died. A lot of people were killed. Naturally, the Civil War was one of the bloodiest conflicts ever on American soil. Many lives were lost. Many lives were lost in absolute, utter agony and pain. There are a number of people. There are actually societies here in the United States. Here in Virginia as well. I've met a society in South Carolina. There's two of them in, well, I'm say societies, groups. There's two in Florida, one in Savannah, Georgia that I know of that's still there, and three in Kentucky. These are groups of people, um, who found out that one of their past lives, took place during the Civil War. Like I said, and they went, through their current life, sometimes with irrational fears. They had an irrational fear of drowning, or had an irrational fear of blood, um, or every time they would hear a loud bang in their life, they would get a sense of fear and dread that would just permeate their entire body, which made to them, and I'm saying irrational because in their life, this is something they couldn't explain why they were afraid of. They couldn't explain why they were scared of heights. They couldn't explain why they had a fear of drowning or a fear of motion, um, until they started. And there are people here in the United States, there are psychologists, um, and I'm going to say specialized, because now we're talking about something that falls, and this is probably going to be slightly insulting when I say this to some people. It's considered, people who do what's called past life regressions. They use hypnotherapy to help people go back and explore these memories of these past lives that they once lived, in an effort to understand the phobias that they're experiencing and come to grips with the issues they have in their current life. Say this fear of drowning that they had, that made no sense. They always felt like, they couldn't go near a body of water, they'd drown. Now, there is, and I know this is actually based, what I'm telling you is a true story that I heard straight from one of the guys who experienced it. Um, oh my God, the shingle shot. What the fuck? What are y'all talking about? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have read any of the comments. And by the way, if you get the shingles shot, it's called Zostavax. I used to work at a pharmacy, and Zostavax is still given as a shot for shingles. Um, it causes more harm than good, in my personal opinion, but that's a story for another day. But a guy I got to know and become friends with, we have here in Virginia, we have we have battlefields all over the whole state. I am missing, apparently, heavy metal. I'm missing some really batshit conversations. What the fuck? Usually I'm the one in the chat room getting shit stirred up, but it looks like you guys have joined in. I love it. Absolutely love that y'all are having fun. I love it. I'm glad my show can got everybody an opportunity just to really have a good time. And really have a good time. That's what it's all about. It's having a damn good time. I got to know one of the societies that here in Virginia, in Central Virginia here. Hold on, Papa Joy, you've got fucking shingles? Dude, you know it brings on shingles, right? It's where you had chicken pox and it stays in your system. It stays in your nervous system, the base of your spine. And shingles is brought on by stress. Um, I know you've had a lot of stress, dude. I'm sorry. I really am sorry. I'm not going to go any further with my insight. I know, and forget that I brought it up. Forget that I brought it up. I'm not going to use my insight tonight. I'm not going to use my fucking insight. Insight sucks ass. And one day I'm going to do a show on insight. Insight sucks ass. Uh, you get a lot of information with insight that you don't ask for. And I try not to vocalize it too often because it can be awkward. Um, and some people can be offended by it and think that I'm digging into their private life, but I don't mean to be. So I am sorry. I'll shut up now. I will ignore my insight. One day I'll talk about how insight works. It sucks ass most of the time, but it's interesting. Um, I know insight sucks ass. And it works over long distances, and it works over digital media like this too, and it works on people that you like, and people that you care about, and it's really hard to turn it off. Well, you can't turn it off, um, but it's a gift or a curse depending on how you see it. That's a story for another day. So I will fucking shut up now. Apparently, I'm going to get everybody drunk as fuck on this. Okay. There's several, like I said, there are groups in several states that I know of that believe, and I believe too, that they once, one of their past lives involved being active in the Civil War. Um, and they've put together support groups to help them work through the issues that carried over into this life from the Civil War, the life they lived in the Civil War. Say, for example, drowning. Now, we have a battlefield here in Central Virginia, which is kind of famous here in Central Virginia. It's got an amazingly haunted house on it, too. I mean, I don't say haunted house often, but this fucking house is crazy haunted. It's called Hillsman's House. in Hillsman's Farm. It's at a place called Sailors Creek Battlefield. Some of my Virginia people who watch this show will know what I'm talking about. And some of my Civil War buff friends out there will know about Sailors Creek Battlefield. Really quick, Hillsman's house during the retreat, and everybody knows the Civil War retreat, Lee's retreat. He General Lee fought his way as they retreated. It was a fight. The retreat was a fighting retreat all the way to Appomattox County. Well, one of the places they had to stop at was at Hillsman's house, Hillsman's farm, and they had to take care of the wounded there. And a lot of people had many of their limbs amputated, their legs, arms, hands, fingers, feet, you name it. And now this is not a legend, this is the actual truth. The body parts were tossed out of the windows into large piles, as well as the dead. The dead were buried in shallow graves, but the body parts themselves, they actually took to two dry wells in the back of the house. And they took them to those two dry wells and they dumped the body parts down the wells to dispose of them. And now, why it's called Sailor's Creek is because it has a creek. Remember when you hear me talking about creeks. Creeks in the country and creeks especially in Virginia and in the South. When we call something a creek, you can pretty much guess that it's probably going to be more like a river or close to a fucking small river. But the soldiers who were retreating across Sailor's Creek, Lee's soldiers that were retreating across the creek, they were met at the top of the banks of the creek, the high banks of the creek, when they had to climb up the mud to get to the top. They were met by the Yankee soldiers, who shot them in the face, shot them in the body as they were trying to climb up out of the creek. Those who were shot and did not die right away fell back into the creek face first, usually, and they drowned and they died in the creek. And their bodies floated down the creek, never to be seen again. Usually, a lot of people were not recovered from that battle there at all. Bodies were not recovered very from that battle at all, for the most part. And one of the guys that was a part of that past life, Civil War past life society, the man couldn't take a bath without feeling like he was drowning. As a child, he was scared to death to take baths or to have his head or face immersed in the water. He grew up like that within a natural fear. He wouldn't get on a boat in a body of water. He did not like crossing bridges. And he underwent past life regression therapy, which some people still, again, they call it pseudoscience. I prefer to call it it is a science, but I consider it a metaphysical science with deep roots into actual psychological science. And he found out that he was one of the soldiers who was trying to climb the banks at Sailor's Creek. And he was shot in the chest, did not die from the wound. He fell face first into the water. He had other bodies fall on top of him, and he could not push himself out of the water with all the bodies that were on him. And he laid in that creek and floated down the creek with all these bodies and everything else around him, and until he drowned, face first in the water until he drowned. Once he was able to pull up those memories, now as he was telling it to me, his whole face and demeanor changed as he was telling me that story. It was like he had become a different person as he was telling me that story. It was no longer a story, it was a memory. He was telling me a memory, a past life memory. His face literally, for those who know the term transmogrification, it's when you can assume the facial features or the physical features or something or somebody else. that's not permanent. He literally looked completely different to me. He looked like a much younger man. He was in his 40s, but he looked like somebody who was in his early 20s or um, late teens when it changed. His whole face changed. It was absolutely amazing. I even saw a shadow of a beard, 5 o'clock shadow on his face, um, as he was telling me the memory, because he went back into that memory to be able to explain it to me in such gruesome detail. So, of course, I believed him because that wasn't he wasn't the only one who had memories like that of that battle there at Sailor's Creek that was in that group. Um, I had met other people who were soldiers who were at Gettysburg, who died at Gettysburg, who died at Shiloh, um, who were burned up during Sherman's march through Georgia. Because he burned as he went along. He burned whole towns and farms to the ground as Sherman marched through Georgia, for those who do not know their Civil War history. And he set homes ablaze with people in them. And some soldiers who had hidden out in the basement of some of the farmhouses. Sherman's soldiers would set the farmhouses ablaze and burn them alive in the basement. And the people who had memories of being in that basement, being burned alive, they had diseases that were like, they had asthma, bronchitis, um, things that were not common, that were not something that they were the first member of their family for generations to ever have that. But it stemmed from the fact that they choked to death on the smoke while hiding in these basements as Sherman's soldiers burned the house down around them. And they asphyxiated from that. Now, once these guys and women, once the men and women discovered that a lot of these hangups that they had were the result of memories of a past life that they weren't able to fully recall, but it was affecting them physically, emotionally, and mentally. Once uh, the past life regressionist was able to help them explore those memories fully, they were actually able to heal. They were able to understand why this was happening to them in this lifetime. And they were able to move on with their life and live happy, healthy lives, but have some amazing stories to tell to their children and grandchildren, and to anybody who would listen as well, including me. I found it utterly fascinating. They actually introduced me. God, he had an office outside of Virginia Tech, here in Virginia. No, not Virginia Tech, University of Virginia, outside the University of Virginia. It was in Charlottesville, Virginia. Um, and they told me maybe I should go see her. She was a she specialized in past life regression um, via hypnotherapy. That I should go see if I could find out who I was in a past life, if I was anybody in a past life, that I was not a new soul in this world. I always knew I wasn't a new soul, for God's sake. I had plenty of hang-ups and plenty of memories that made no sense. But I went there, um, uninsured at the time, so I had to pay her out of my pocket. I'm not going to tell you how I got the money for that. That's a story for another day. Let's let you know. Those patchouli smokers in and around Charlottesville, they will buy all kinds of awesome herbal things from you. Made me enough money to be able to do that. Christine, it is possible for people who were lovers or knew each other in a past life to connect in a new life. I honestly think that's where the term soulmates come from. Um, it's souls that were intertwined in a past life that um, that came together again in this life. Because there are people who go through multiple marriages and divorces, not finding happiness, not finding a connection with them. Um, but then sometimes really late in their life, they'll find somebody who was literally going through the exact same thing they did. They had gone through a ton of relationships without ever feeling satisfied or fulfilled. But when they meet each other, it feels like that they were meant to be together. I believe that they probably were together in a past life. And not to sound too sappy, that they found each other again in this life and they were able to connect again in this life and be whole again. So yeah, I do believe in that. I do believe that a great deal, actually. I do believe that enemies, people who had had a terrible dislike for each other, mortal enemies, that they were destined to encounter each other again in another lifetime. They would never be able to get away from each other. They would always go at it again, at least until they learned the lessons that led them down that path in the first place, and they were able to break that cycle. Just putting that out there. Okay, just to finish up my story really quick. I went to my the hypnotherapist who specialized in past life regression in Charlottesville, Virginia. God, I don't even know if she's still alive. Hope she is. She was really awesome when I met her. She'd write your prescription. I mean, she was a medical doctor. You know? She could write prescriptions. She'd write your prescription for any kind of shit back in the day. Remember, this was back in the day. It was, you get some good stuff back in the day. Um, but that's a story for another time. And she helped me retrieve. I've always had a penchant for writing, um, and for seeing the fantastical of the world around me. Um, I've always seen things differently. Um, it set me apart from the rest of my family. Um, my wanderlust that was in me, that I needed to go out and explore the world and write about it and experience the world around me. That I wanted everything around me to be wonderful and new, whether it was terrible and vicious or evil. I wanted to be there. If it was terrible and frightening, I wanted to be frightened. I wanted so I could have that experience. I never quite understood, and my family never quite understood where that came from. And I was telling this to her, so she put me under. Come to find out, I'm not very susceptible to hypnosis either. It took her for fucking ever to get me under, get me relaxed enough to do it. Apparently, I have a very strong will. Um, which is very counterproductive to anybody who wishes to experience any kind of hypnotherapy. Don't have a stubborn streak, because it fucks up the whole process. And she had me go through my memories as if they were a great photo album and turn the pages. And she says, now you're going to turn the page on this life and you're going to go back and you're going to start seeing pictures. Not of this life, but of another life. And she went on with that. And in my mind, she had taken me through the photo album of my life. And we'd explored this life. And then she went to that last page. She says, when you turn that, you're going to see the pictures of who you were before. Of who you were. Of another life. And when I turned that page, it was one big picture that appeared on that page like a mirror. Like I was looking at like a mirror image of myself. And she asked me to, you know, describe what I was looking at, what I looked like. And what I described to her was Edgar Allan Poe. I could see my memories as Edgar Allan Poe. I could feel what I felt um, when I was Poe, and I would go to the bars, and I would go to the brothels, and when I would smoke opium and drink absinthe with a touch of laudanum in it, a touch of poison, um, and I would sit down and in my malaise and my melancholy and write, and I would dream the most fantastical dreams, and I would write them down and with in phantasmagoric imagery. And I realized that when I came out, she was all grin. She says, "You know who you were, who?" And she said, "Who were you?" And I said, "I was Edgar Allan Poe." So that was my experience in one of my past life. She wanted to explore other lives, but I couldn't afford her at the time to continue to do it. Plus, it unnerved me. It fascinated, but unnerved me at the same time to know that I was this person of another life. Make sure you go to somebody that's reputable to that has a good reputation, especially if they have a good reputation. They should not be able to tell you they have a good reputation. You should be able to talk to their clients, their former and current clients, to tell you about their experiences and how they and that they had with the hypnotherapist and with past life regression. Um, Most people will tell you honestly that they're full of shit or they were quacks or that it was the best time that the best money ever spent to find out more about themselves. Why they are the way they are is because of something that happened in a past life. So you got to do your homework when you go out to find a hypnotherapist to do past life regressions with. Make sure they're not a cult leader or a serial killer for that matter. But that was my experience when I found out I was Edgar Allan Poe, which explained a great deal about my life and my penchant for the fantastical. It also explained my bouts of melancholy that I had too, that made no sense. That the melancholy that I had in my lifetime that made no sense, because dearest Poe spent his life in a various state of melancholy and in a malaise and the sadness that he felt. That it stained this my spirit to this day. And it's the reason why I experienced what I experienced in my lifetime, because of my experiences I had in my past lifetime. Okay, guys, it looks like it's that magical time again. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I had a great time talking about this. I hope you all enjoyed tonight's episode. I know I did. You guys made me laugh a whole lot tonight, which is always fun, and I hope I made you laugh as well. If you've been playing the drinking game tonight, do not drink and drive, because I know I've said that special phrase a fucking 100 times tonight, and you have got to be off your ass from drinking so much. um, my next show we're going to do is next week. I'll be returning to everybody's favorite topic, creatures and monsters and critters of the paranormal world. I'll be talking about are the creatures and monsters and spirits that are found on internet creepypastas. Those who do not know that, I'll be able to explain that to you as well. These internet legends that are spread on the internet and on social media, are they real? They started off as a legend, but have they become real in our world? It's going to be a fun show next week, so I hope everybody can come out and see it. Are creepypasta monsters real? It's going to be a damn fun time. By the way, if you follow me on Twitter, I had a little fun by posting a picture of the Smile Dog, which is from a creepypasta. I found one of the original pictures of Smile Dog that was circulated for the creepypasta. And I put it on there just to see who would recognize it. And a few people recognized Smile Dog, knew what it was. So look, if you follow me on Twitter, I'll be dropping a few more creepypasta bits and pieces there to prepare everybody for that episode. Um, and until then, I want to thank everybody for joining me on What the Fuck Paranormal Chat with the Naked Bigfoot. I am your host, your humble host, Mike the Naked Bigfoot. I appreciate everybody who joined me tonight, and I appreciate everybody who's going to watch the replay. If you like what you saw, please hit the like button and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Share this with your friends. Explore some of my past shows. We've talked about some really fascinating things. Well, I've talked about some really fascinating things. Some of them funny, some of them scary, some of them really disturbing. Um, you can follow me on Twitter at VoodooMan3. Um, Again, thanks to everybody. Love you long time. Have a great night. And until we meet again.